community in Fredericksburg is growing, and we know that people choose to live here, and for very good reason. It's important that we have resources in place so that people can take care of themselves, so that our economy can keep moving, so that this community can continue to thrive. And this is our opportunity to help them stay well and stay part of the community as contributing members.
Please join us in keeping Fredericksburg and Gillespie County special. Be Texas friendly. Share the road. Put litter in its place. Respect private property. And protect our dark skies. Thank you for caring about our community.
It is exciting getting ready for the big 4th of July parade here in beautiful Fredericksburg, Texas. This has become burning with the rebounds.
Welcome to the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce.
Please all clap here, 3,500. So that go to your dad.
And we hear that promise again in John's Gospel.
We love living in the country.
When I think about
Husband.
Along the fairways at Lady Bird have a way of slowing life.
Hey there, well, welcome, Billy fans. This is
on September 25th, 1925.
John
when she sank
Crawford Fritch.
go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here this morning at Coffee with the City Manager. We've got a very good crowd this morning, it looks like. I see a lot of familiar faces. I see some new faces out in the crowd. So if you haven't been here, welcome. The format of this meeting has changed just a little bit. We have gone to more of a staff presentation type format. You'll be hearing from our Development Services Department today an abbreviated version of a development presentation we gave to Council last month. In case you were wondering what's going on around town, all of the building, I see some architects in here as well. She's smiling. She knows what's going on, but in case you wondered what's going on, we're going to fill in some of those blanks, whether it's residential or commercial or otherwise. Give you an opportunity to ask questions. I will give an update on a number of different items this morning, and then give everyone a chance to introduce themselves if you would like and ask questions at the end. So feel free to do that. We're going to get through this fairly quickly. So before we get started, we do have a microphone. This is being recorded and broadcast live by Fbg.Live. So for those of you that can't make this meeting, you can tune in or watch it later. But we need you to use the microphone if you're making a comment or asking a question so that we can pick that up for those that are viewing. So who has the microphone? Leslie has a microphone. Is that the only microphone we have? And Sean has a microphone over here. So if you could just wait for them, that would be great. So first and foremost, I wanted to introduce our new City Secretary, Leticia Basek. She comes to us. She comes to us with a ton of experience, 35 years of experience in the position. She was with the City of San Antonio for about 16 years as their city clerk, city secretary. McAllen for about 14 years. I'm getting a little bit better at this. 2 years at Trophy Club. You were down in Harlingen. That's where you started, in Harlingen. And consequently, we had an open position, and she and her husband have been looking to relocate to Fredericksburg for the last couple of years. So a little bit of a coincidence, but she is going to be an integral part of our team. So we certainly welcome her and all of her wonderful experience. I'm sure that she'll make a big impact not only on the city organization, but this community. From just a little that I've been around her, she's a very motivated, very experienced, very creative thinking person, like a lot of our staff. So we have a wonderful group of folks. They're the ones that do all the good work. I have the pleasure of managing all of that. So welcome, Leticia. Do you mind if I give your husband's name? Kenny. Do you know Kenny? Okay. So he'll be here too. So July 4th parade coming up, 10 a.m. on Main Street. This has been a cornerstone event in Fredericksburg every year. Come out and enjoy it. It's a little bit early, so hopefully you can beat the heat just a bit. It's one of the things that I really look forward to. I'm always camped out with some of the other city staff right in front of City Hall. Sean, do you have anything to add regarding that particular event?
I would just say it's going to be streamed live by Fbg.Live as well. So if you can't make it out to parade day, or if you have family, friends in another area, they can watch live that morning.
And then also that night, and Andrea, you might add to this, we have fireworks. The setup is right here on the golf course driving range. Those go off at 9:30. The access is into the park off of 16. Would you like to add any details to that? So again, 9:30 that night. So again, come out and enjoy that as well. I wanted to mention that we're getting into the budget process. We have gone through the first round of the meeting with staff, all of the departments across the board. And I'll tell you right up front, in terms of budget guidance this year, we have asked everyone to reduce their operating budget by 3%, and most have met that, some have exceeded that. So we're getting really serious about really ratcheting down again on those operating budgets. We do have some major equipment and some major projects that we'll continue to do, but we're really trying to get into the budget process this year at the minimum in terms of our operations, taking a very close look at that. We do have a budget calendar online. If you would like to get on the website, you can search for that. If you're interested in making any of the public hearings, I believe there are 3 of those through the budget process. I'm always available if you have questions, as is our finance director. The University Center, we had a question a couple of months ago about the city purchasing the University Center. I was not at Coffee last month, but I understand our Assistant City Manager, Garrett Bond, gave an update. The city is pursuing the purchase of the University Center. There's a lot of information on that too that I can share offline. I see Bud Harris here. It's really a win-win for both entities, and I see him shaking his head. So the proceeds from the sale of the University Center will be rolled into the scholarship endowment fund growth, which will continue to impact local kids attending universities across the state of Texas. So a lot more to come on that too as that develops, but we are pursuing that purchase currently. Main Street paving project, I'll have Chris Canese give an update on that particular project. I know there's some questions, maybe some signage going up currently. We'll provide a little bit more detail on that particular project. What to expect during construction, what to expect after construction. Just quickly, the July 2nd City Council meeting has been canceled. We only had one item on the agenda. So the council let us off the hook. There's actually several council members that just took this week off ahead of that, so they could have a little bit of an opportunity to relax, and staff as well, before the 4th of July holiday. So our next regular meeting is on July 16th. I wanted to mention that on July 2nd, we are having a Main Street Merchant Town Hall meeting at the CVB. This is an invitation only through the Chamber of Commerce. For mainly Main Street merchants, this is the first of a number of these types of meetings that we're going to have to listen to concerns from Main Street business owners, and to also talk about some of the city initiatives that are in place, some other things that we've been talking about for the last couple of years, over the last decade probably. So the idea is to eventually form a Main Street merchant group, maybe even have a staff person that is dedicated to working with that group on issues like open container. We've talked a lot about no chains on Main. There have been a lot of questions about signage. I see Rosemary smiling back there. Managed parking. Understand that there may be some questions about parking on Main Street this morning, so we can answer those. Things like that. What's going on at either end of Main Street in terms of development. So that's coming up next week as well. And I wanted finally to mention before I hand it over to Anna that next month we will have the Albert Hotel General Manager here. His name is Mike Bolick, correct? And some other representatives from the Albert Hotel presenting on everything related to their development. So that's coming up next month. So with that, I will turn it over to our Development Services Director. While we're doing that, I wanted to recognize a few folks that are here with us in the audience. We have Karen Joseph, former council member, Tom Musselman, former council member, former mayor. Any other council members that I'm missing. I don't see any. Graham Pearson, former council member, was on the council when I came on board in 2013. So thank you all for being here. And we, of course, have a number of city staff here. Anna Hudson.
Good morning, everyone. Anna Hudson, Director of Development Services, and I'm just going to give you an update on what you're seeing around town. Or if you're like me, maybe you're not seeing it, but you would like to see it. If you're like me, you kind of have the same routine, and you go home and you go to HEB, and maybe you don't see all of town. So this should be an eye-opening of what's going on all parts of town. So we're going to start with single-family residential subdivisions. So if we talk about subdivisions, we're talking about a plat of land that's maybe never been developed before and gone through the platting process, and platting is where you create individual lots. And so what you can see here are the acres of land that they developed and the number of lots on the right. So Harmony Hills is off of Pica Road. If you've been down Pica recently, that was initially started by GT Development. There's an X over here. Let me see if I can do that. So Pica Road, Harmony Hills, and that was initially started by GT Development, and then they sold to DR Horton. So what's new in 2023 and 2024 is that we have two big-time housing developers that are here now. We have Lennar and DR Horton, and we've never had really that kind of mass production housing in Fredericksburg, but we've got it now. And DR Horton is I think they've pulled permits for every lot at this point. Not all the houses are completed, but they've at least pulled a permit or submitted a permit for every lot. So we do expect that development to be complete by the end of the calendar year. So that gives you an idea of what that development looks like, kind of a horseshoe shape. And there's the aerial. So that's probably a couple weeks old now, and there's probably a couple new houses there. So we do expect Harmony Hills to be completely developed. Last time we looked, the price ranges for about $400,000 to $500,000, but they do actually have some 5-bedroom homes, so a good option for families with multiple kids. The next one is Post Oak Village, and that one's been under construction for a while. That's at Post Oak and Live Oak, so just north of the Live Oak intersection there. And that one has I think it's just about finished. It was a little bit smaller, kind of the same horseshoe concept, just in a smaller subdivision. So kind of behind that warehouse-looking building is St. Vincent de Paul, to help you orient. And the price point there, if you'll go back one, let's see. Yeah, about $450,000 to $546,000. If you can tell, those are small lots. Those are considered R1A. So the minimum lot size is 4,500 square feet. So the width of the lot is a minimum of 45 feet. So you can, and those are obviously maxed out. That's as much house as they can put on that lot. 5 feet on either, so 5 feet between your property lines, so 10 between the houses. The next one is Friendship Oaks. So this is the Lennar development on Friendship, where Creek Street now punches out, right? So with this development essentially extended Creek Street from Friendship all the way to 87. They're doing 4 phases. What they're doing right now is the first phase, and it's about 100 lots, and they're submitting 6 permits at a time, and as quick as we can approve them, they're building them. So that's just off of Friendship. You can see it from Friendship, but it doesn't actually touch Friendship. So those are going up. Those are R1, a little bit a larger lot, and this is the most affordable product, I would say, right now. When they initially started, it was the price point was higher, but they've dropped it. So last I checked, it was starting at about $257,000. And this is the thing about the Lennar is that it's a MUD, a municipal utility district. So they have, if you buy there, just know that you're going to have a higher tax rate essentially at the end of the year. They put a $1 fee essentially, right? If the city's tax is 16 cents, you're paying an extra $1 to that development, because they did that to essentially pay for their infrastructure up front. So the homeowners are then paying off the infrastructure cost. Then Woodcrest, this is the old KNAF building was torn down, the radio station on Woodcrest and Travis and Catholic Cemetery Road. That was demolished, and then they've created 9 lots, and those are R1 lots. The lot itself is going for about $400,000. I don't know that we have any buildings going up yet, but the development's approved and ready for construction. So next we'll move on to multifamily. So this was the big kind of shock to the local economy, to the housing stock in just a month's time between March and May. You see the difference between the under construction and recently completed. We had several projects kind of get their certificates of occupancy at the same time. So a lot were completed around the same time. So for a long time in Fredericksburg, we had about 800 apartment units all across, different sizes all over town. So that was a really steady number and very high or high occupancy, low vacancy rates for multifamily, but we've had several hit at the same time. So we'll go through those. So the first, Algarita Phase 2. So that's on Live Oak, again, close to St. Vincent de Paul at the corner of Live Oak and Post Oak. So they wound up developing the south side and the north side. The south side was the old TriStar facility, and they repurposed that, and those are efficiency units. And then they built new 2-story next to that, and those are 1-bedrooms. And so across the street is Algarita Phase 2, and those are 2-unit properties. And so there are about 42 of those 2-bedroom properties. The rate, some of the apartments you can find their rent prices online, and those 2 bedrooms are $2,000, but there's a mandatory $350 fee as well. So really your rent's $2,300 for a 2-bedroom in Fredericksburg. And so if you've heard this analysis called cost burden, right? So you shouldn't pay more than 1/3 of your salary towards your rent and living expenses. So in order to not be cost burdened and live here, you'd have to make about $89,000. So just a little reference point. The other one that everybody's noticed is Barron's Park Apartment. That's the one near HEB on Ufer Street. And they're making some good progress there. Those are, go back, 88 units, I believe? Yep, 88 units, okay. And that's on 4 acres, so that's a pretty dense development that has CBD zoning, Central Business District zoning, so that's why we've got that density there. But that's coming along, and that's also, if you noticed, the staging for the new pedestrian bridges going in over Llano Street. And so this will have a connection then to that pedestrian walkway. They'll have a pedestrian path behind this apartment complex as well. And then the Alora May is under construction. That is actually in front of the Lennar development on Friendship at Creek Street. And so these are individual condo units, so 22 condo units. And these will not be short-term rentals, which is unlike any of the other condos we've got in town, which pretty much all turned into short-term rentals. So these will not be STRs. And so they have pulled some building permits there. You can see the prepping for the foundations there. So lots of dirt being turned and buildings going up all over town. And then recently completed, again, these are the Algarita on the south side that were actually completed and are being occupied now. And I think they have some availability. I think because so many apartments have hit recently, there's actually some vacancies. So let's see, yep, Orchard Grove on Llano Street, Llano and Crabapple. This was the second phase, actually probably technically the third phase. So Orchard Grove had apartments, townhomes, and then this is the second phase of the apartment building. So they look very much like the previously approved apartment buildings. So that's the new construction, and those are open. People are occupying those now. And that had R3 zoning, so multifamily zoning. I will say this was one where we required a sidewalk, and I drive by this every day, and I love to see people actually using the sidewalks. If you build it, they will come. So again, this is a good location, being close to the elementary school. There's definitely a lot of families that live there and get to walk over to the elementary school. And you can see that price point there. I don't know if they have a required fee on top of that. It's interesting. I've been reading about this in newspaper articles about renters that sign in for a $2,000 lease, but then there's these mandatory, well, if you want water and cable and you can't opt out, you have to have water, cable, and the valet trash service, kind of these junk fees that they're calling them. So it's a little bit of buyer beware what you're actually getting, or what your actual rent will be. And then Vineyard Crossing, this one's been done a little longer. This is behind HEB. This was an existing apartment that somebody bought and rehabbed and then added a few more buildings to that along Eagle Street. So very much in the same design as the original apartments behind Whataburger. And then the 1846 apartments on Friendship, that's the larger one that everybody's noticed. You can see it when you drive down 16, kind of changing the complexion of town, a larger apartment complex. And that's a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, and that's 234 units. And the last building should be CO'd given its certificate of occupancy this week. So they're open and accepting rentals. And then the multifamily approved and not started. So this is pretty big, and these have been approved for a while. And let me stop there too and say, I think what's been completed is, I would say the market is saturated at this point. I had a developer call me last week and ask about the possibility of rezoning an R1 lot to R2, and I said, well, have you done your analysis? What's the demand for multifamily right now? And he said, oh, well, we've not paid the consultant to do that. I said, well, let me just tell you, we had 600 hit the market last month. And he goes, oh, never mind. So, so this is good information for me to give out, for the EDC to give out, that, hey, we're pretty saturated for now. So we're not looking for a lot of new R2 or R3 multifamily. Because this is also all approved, and they could begin work. So Friendship Oaks duplexes, this is pretty much across Creek Street, the new extension of Creek Street, where Lennar's going in. This would be across the street from that, and these would be duplexes. Their site plan was about to expire, so they went to P&Z and got it renewed for another 2 years. But we asked them, what's your timeline and what's your price point, and they didn't really have an answer. So again, I think funding's kind of drying up a little bit for multifamily. We're getting harder to get. Seiko is the approved development at Eagle and Friendship, and that was mixed apartments, some rentals that look like single family, and a little bit of retail on the front. But they're still trying to get funding, so there's no building permits issued for this. Botanica, also on Friendship Lane near Eagle, on the north side. And that, again, they've gone quiet on us, so we've not heard anything, but their development is approved, and so it's vested. So if they wanted to sell the development's still viable. And then Keller Oaks Phase 1, this is behind Burger King, between Burger King and Windcrest, the side of that hill, Schneider Hill. So that's 14 acres. There's several phases to that. The first phase was supposed to be these townhomes that would be on the side of the hill looking out over town, but I've had some inquiries recently, and I don't know that that's moving forward anytime soon. And then the verandas at Frieden are going to be back on the P&Z agenda for July 2nd in the evening to reapprove their site plan. I think they're making some modifications to the site plan so that project will be reapproved for another 2 years. Again, we'll find out if they're really moving forward. But that is, the difference on that one is that it's mostly, I believe it's strictly over 55, so an age-restricted development. So you can see all those X's, and mostly on the south side, right? That's the easier part of town to develop, is the south side where it's flat farmland. And then commercial, obviously the middle school's not commercial, but it's a big project, and it's moving right along. And then Grand Central at Milam, that was the old Super S. They have multiple tenants inside of that building, and right now I think Pie Social, the restaurant in the back of that building, will be the next to get its certificate of occupancy. Albert Hotel, you'll get a full update next month, but they are moving along. The buildings on Main Street, the two historic buildings, the old saloon, the White Elephant Saloon, and the pharmacy building are both open, separate, because they're separate from the main hotel building. And there's a really cool aerial shot of what that looks like. So this is the Main Street side, and that'll actually be retail, but you can get to the hotel will be accessed from Austin Street. And then a surgery center. If you've noticed, South Milam, there's a lot going on. So there's a surgery center there at the corner of Windcrest and Milam, and that's Dr. Clint Bikers doing a surgery center there. And the Heart of the Hills Pregnancy Resource Center is at Milam and Live Oak. That's the hard corner, and then you'll see to the north of that, those are individual R1 lots, so those can be residential lots. My understanding is the owner might actually build those and then rent those out. So may not be homes for sale, but maybe rentals. And then Kovar Dental is also building on South Milam, closer to Live Oak. And then the Whitetail Hotel on West Austin near the Girl Scout cabin it's got their certificate of occupancy. They don't have actually it's technically an STR facility because there's 8 units. And then the front will be a little ice cream shop, and in the back they've got a manager's quarters, so someone will be on site to manage that property. And then soccer field improvements, if you've driven by. Do I need to say there's dirt available? If anyone, no dirt available, but lots of improvements going on for the soccer fields as well. Is that the end of mine? Yes, all right, any questions?
Thank you, this helps. I saw a sign, a commercial development group out of Dallas, which I looked on their website, looked like they were going to do an infill apartment complex there.
Yeah, the old peanut factory. Nothing's formally been approved there. We've seen some concepts drawn by Lake Flato for redevelopment, but nothing's actually gone through planning and zoning for formal approval. And the real estate agent and I have been playing phone tag, so I'm expecting some type of update from him. But that's a prime, we would love to see that redeveloped into something.
For sure, thank you.
Anna, what's going on with that property that's directly across from HEB, the big mound of dirt?
Not much. That same group, the group that bought the peanut factory, bought that property, and they said it was the most expensive piece of property they've ever bought, and they've bought in Whitefish, Montana. But I think it might be back on the market.
So with all this growth that we've got going on here, when's HEB going to grow into something big like the one they have in Bernie? I mean, this little one here is like really in need.
You'd have to ask Marilyn McNabb about that. I mean, they own that little strip next to them, but
yeah, they're going to have to find a whole new property because they can't expand over there. Well, that's because it's small. He's saying it's the most profitable one around. Well, that's because we're forced to go to this little tiny store. But we really need a bigger, where it's got more variety and more of everything.
I'm not speaking for HEB or Marilyn McNabb, but I have asked her that question. And the growth to get a second store is substantial. I don't see that happening. She doesn't see that happening anytime soon.
Anything else?
Hi, I'm Deb Youngblood with the Pertinalis River Alliance. I have 2 questions. and they're kind of related, and I don't know if you can answer them or not, but I would like to hear from somebody. Regarding these new developments, regarding these new, oh boy, yeah. Okay. Regarding these new developments, do any of the plans for any of them, do they include plans for rainwater harvesting and reuse?
None that have been approved have done that, no.
The second question is, do any of these developments have any plans for capture and reuse of gray water or storm water?
They have to capture their storm water. They go through the engineering process, and they can't send off more storm water than is already historically on the property, so they have to retain or detain that. But we encourage LID, low impact design, but it's not a requirement.
Okay, why not?
Well, we went through the comp plan process, right? And there are some recommendations in certain sections of the comp plan to encourage that or require that. But to do that, we will have to open up the subdivision ordinance and possibly the zoning ordinance. So if you've been following along, if you've been coming to these, you know I've been talking about the comp plan. So the comp plan gives us lots of great recommendations. But to be very successful in doing that, we need to open up the zoning and the subdivision ordinance and really just kind of tear them apart, right? And to do that, we're going to have to hire a third-party consultant and have lots of these types of meetings where we workshop it, and have these discussions and talk about what's the impact, what's the financial impact. So that process, we call that a unified development code, where you take all of your, because we have a lot of ordinances. I can tell you a whole list of ordinances that we have, and so to make sure that if we change one thing, that it's not going to conflict with another ordinance. So to do a unified development code takes about 18 months and money and consultants. So I'm requesting that in our development budget this year.
Okay.
Because if we think there's easy, well, let's cherry pick the easy things. Then at the end of the year, we've got 3 things that we've done, but then they've only made it more complicated for the developer. So a unified development code makes it easy for you to look at a property and understand all the rules that apply to that property, and that they are then in line with our new adopted comp plan, which does speak to water reclamation, water conservation and all the other things that we want, sidewalks and trails and connectivity and better parking management. So.
Okay.
Let me add to that. So water supply and water conservation is top of mind all the time. You will see a number of different rainwater catchment systems going in on city-owned buildings. The existing city hall, building out at our consolidated warehouse. We're talking about the university center, if that all works out. We also do everything we can to make sure that our system integrity is top-notch. I just mentioned this to a gentleman a little bit earlier. You've heard me say this before. The average small town in Texas has over 50% water loss. So if they pump a gallon out into their system, they're losing half that through leaks.
Right.
We're consistently around or below 5%. It's one of the lowest in the state, and we've worked real hard to get there. Over the last decade, we have worked to make system improvements to the extent that our water savings is enough, just the savings of being good stewards of our system. That savings is enough to support 10 years of growth here. So when we think about water conservation, the first thing we're going to do is continue to maintain that system so that we have that in place. Because you can't do enough rainwater catchment, or you can't have in place a watering restriction stage to make up for that. Right. So we're systematically working down the list to some of these items, a little bit more non-standard, but I certainly support the things that you just mentioned. I think you'll see a lot more of that as we right. You know, it all adds up to, it all adds up to the end. I'll also say that two things. We hear about our explosive growth in Fredericksburg. We just talked about this last night at Citizen University. We really only grow a little bit over 1% population per year. We issue, and that's changing a little bit, 70 to 80 on average, building permits for single-family residential homes a year. All these apartment complexes, multifamily, are going to move the needle on that population growth just a little bit up, maybe. But at the same time, when you add up all of the apartment complexes, that water demand is relatively low. Overall, below 10%. Overall, below 10% compared to the 70% demand by residential outdoor irrigation. So again, when we talk about watering restrictions and limiting the time that you can water, when we have a target of a 20% reduction in stage 4, that's 2 times more than all the apartment complexes in town use, and it's all up to our residents to help us conserve that water. So the last thing, we're also talking about a full-time staff person potentially that does nothing but water conservation. Right. And we've heard this group mention that a number of times. It's something Chris and I have discussed with the council in the past. We'll continue to do that during the budget this year. And again, as we're developing that program, at some point it might make sense to add that person. So thank you.
I wholeheartedly support that.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. I know you do. We support what y'all are doing too, and we understand that.
One more question. I have one quick question. Is this presentation available online for us?
Yes, it's on the development webpage.
Super. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Hang on, Dawn.
Have there been any discussions about bike paths?
Yes, as part of the comp plan, hike and bike trails were identified as a want. There's just, in other cities where they get them, like San Antonio has a greenway, right? They bought up all the creek space with this fund that they got from sales tax. And we just don't have those resources. So, we've got some wide streets where you could potentially put in a bike lane, but that's still infrastructure cost. So I don't have a great answer for you. Everybody wants them. It's just who's going to put them in, who's going to maintain them, where does the money come from, and whose property are they going to go on?
Okay.
I think we have a lot of opportunities for those types of things, even out here in the park and connecting this to neighborhoods. And there's a lot of that will be discussed as a result of the comprehensive plan. In fact, we just talked to the council a couple of meetings ago about a revised sidewalk plan. So again, this comprehensive plan was the starting point. We heard from the community in terms of the community wanting to see more of that type of thing. So you'll see us pursuing those opportunities in the future, again, through the budget process and where it makes sense to do that.
Clinton, I realize in the city that we're taking water conservation very seriously. What about the county? Who's maintaining all the tiny home facilities that we're starting to see pop up?
Yeah, that's the county has very little ability to regulate development, especially with respect to water supply. That's the underground water district, really, that gets involved at that point. Chris, I don't know if you can add anything to that or if that's enough, really. When a new subdivision comes in, I can tell you the first big one that the water district saw come in was Vineyard Ridge many years ago, just north of Stonewall, and that was kind of the starting point of a lot of these that you're starting to see now. To show you a picture of Firefly, for those of you that haven't seen that, it's turned into a pretty huge tiny home RV development. But you want to add anything to that, Chris?
Well, yeah, certainly the Underground Water Conservation District is the regulating body, that anybody that has a permitted well has to get approved through. The county is involved, but they rely on the district for that approval. So it's kind of a team effort when those projects come before the Commissioner's Court for approval. Paul Babb, which is replacing or has replaced Paul Tiber, I think will be a good resource and a good addition to the district. Paul Tiber has done a phenomenal job for many, many years since the creation of the district, but I'm excited to work with Paul Babb a little bit more on that. He brings a wealth of knowledge from the Johnson City area. But yeah, I'd certainly reach out to the district and or the county commissioner or judge in regards to development of that sort.
Any other development-related questions? Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So question, how many, first question is, what constitutes a short-term rental on these new developments?
So short-term rental is anything less than 30 days, and you're required to get a permit and submit hot taxes.
Okay, so you said that there were some of those units, the new developments, are short-term versus long-term.
No. No, none of the multifamily will be short-term.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Second question, thanks. Second question is, how many parking places are allocated per unit? You've got 1 studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. How many parking places are allocated internally?
For the multifamily?
For the multifamily.
Yes, it's 1 per bedroom. There's a ratio, and I'm going to forget it now, but it also includes guest parking. So it depends on the size, as you're saying, if it's a studio or a 2-bedroom. And then there's an allocation for overall guest parking as well.
Okay, so there won't be parking on the streets necessarily.
Shouldn't be.
Okay.
Yeah, they all meet their parking requirements.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anna paints a picture of a booming, thriving city, but you started out talking about the budget process and saying that you were going to your department heads and asking them to cut their budget by 3%. Now that 3% doesn't sound like much until you cut a service that affects me. And then that 3% sounds like a lot. Can you explain to us why you're asking your department heads to cut their budget?
Sure. I could talk for the rest of the day about it.
I know. Give us the thumbnail.
Yeah. So where do I start? Well, first of all, I'll tell you that when you look at our general fund budget is supported by property taxes, sales tax revenues, and generally in lieu of taxes transfer from our utility funds into the general fund. We generate just about twice as much sales tax revenue as property tax revenue in Fredericksburg. Our 16.5-cent tax rate is one of the lowest in the state. Represents, if you live in town, 13% of your overall tax bill. So I'm going to call that relatively small, especially when Anna talks about a development lumping on $1 to that tax rate. So valuations have increased. The last couple of years, I think everybody's feeling that. The big question is, are those valuations going to go flat, or are they going to continue to go up just a little bit? If they're flat or if they go down, that significantly impacts us. Also, we saw a lot of additional visitors to Fredericksburg during the pandemic, and we saw a massive jump in sales tax that has not decreased. So the question is that going to decrease? If that decreases any at all, just a couple of percentage points could be enough where we couldn't give our police department, fire EMS, the raise that they need to keep those positions competitive with other surrounding cities. We couldn't generate that roughly $500,000 additional per year that it takes just to give them that raise. So I would rather really scrub our budget and look close, not cut services, but look at all of the budget line items that we can very carefully and reduce that so we have a little bit more cushion before we come and ask our taxpayers for more, before we roll the dice and just expect people to keep coming to Fredericksburg. You know, we just heard last night that Johnson City's new slogan is, what was it, Anna? The new cool Fredericksburg. So there's a lot of there's a lot of little towns around us that want to be just like us, and you know, people ask me all the time, what is your secret? Well, you know, a lot of it starts with a lot of the unique things we do. If you read in the newspaper some of the quotes, you know, regarding development from various staff, you know some of these things, but our sign ordinance, no chains on Main, just the development standards that we have that a lot of those good standards have been in place for 175 years. That foundation was built. There's a lot of things that make us different than any other small town Texas. And that's what attracts folks here. But that's it, Sharon. Instead of, you know, we did adopt a very low tax rate last year. We gave everybody a break in the face of some massive increases in valuation year over year. We're just trying to do our part to make sure that we're using every single dollar that we get to the greatest extent possible. And that's it. Again, that's a starting point. We're trying to be very conservative in everything that we do.
Thank you. Great answer. Thank you.
In response to the Johnson City question, somebody should talk to the CVB about using some of the hotel occupancy taxes to put that billboard as you come in off of 281 and 290 at Johnson City. We should put up there, I mean, for a year, the real Fredericksburg 26 miles.
I like that.
Okay? So if they actually are using that, oh, come on now. This would be the gig 'em. Okay. Huh? No. Yeah, no. Just the real Fredericksburg, 26 miles. That's all you have to say. Okay. So here's a question with the budget. I think it's laudable to require or to ask departments to scrub your budget. The 3% represents basically the rate of inflation for the next year. So I would think that in some departments, the things that they use have increased because of supply and demand much more than 3%. And I'm sure you're aware of that in part of the budget, as part of the budget analysis. So I would hope that when the city staff and city council, when they're sitting down there making decisions on how they're going to allocate resources this year, that they have maybe a list. You know what various tax rates are going to generate. So are you going to tell the council, at this tax rate, it's going to raise this much money, we can fund this. Here are the priorities you gave me, we can fund this. If we add another quarter cent or another half cent, we can fund this, so that they get options. So when it comes time to vote, they're going to say, okay, we vote this, then this is what we're going to get.
Certainly, and I will say that the state limits cities to a 3.5%
right.
increase in the tax rate.
But did we use all that? But they also have a procedure that if you didn't use all your tax rate, you can add that in.
That's correct, you can, but 3.5% of a very low number is a very low number. If you have a very healthy tax rate, that 3.5% adds a lot more revenue. So
yes.
again, that very low tax rate limits us a lot in terms of revenue. The difference between the no new revenue tax rate and the voter approval rate in terms of revenue is very low. It's not until you really start getting up to a little bit higher tax rate that it makes a big difference. So, you know, even more important that we're very careful with those funds. I would also like to mention, is Graham still here? Graham Pearson still here? He left. Okay, so Graham has written a number of letters to our state representative and other legislators regarding the use of hotel occupancy tax funds for our police department and fire EMS. Our police department and fire EMS departments are larger than they would have to be if we were just supporting our local population versus responding to all of our visitors coming to town. So really we feel like that would be a good use of hotel occupancy tax. We have these visitors coming in that are staying here, and you know, I would say the split's probably 50-50, Chief, in terms of issues with you know, locals versus visitors. I'm seeing head shaking yes back there. Another, you know, I think Graham was proposing adding maybe a percentage point or two to the city's rate and using all of that for fire EMS and PD. What I was just talking to Ellen Troxclair, our state representative, about a couple weeks ago was maybe a bracketed bill for Fredericksburg and other communities that meet a set of criteria. You know, X number of visitors, X percent sales tax coming from those, you know, visitors, size of the department, you know, those types of things, to let us use 10% of that HOT as an inject into the general fund so that our taxpayers don't have to pay for that. Right. So our plan is to sit down with our state legislators and the Hotel and Lodging Association folks and just talk about this. I want to understand their concerns, and I want them to understand what we're dealing with as a community here.
Right. And the last thing, I had I stopped by the recycling center yesterday. We've got some of the greatest people working for the city of Fredericksburg. They care about their jobs. You know, everybody has to live in this community. If you want to know, if you would like to see an outcry in the community, you know, we need to pay a lot of people. We need to pay everybody a good wage. But if you want to see the outcry, wait until people go in their commode and they don't flush it and it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So if you think the most important department is the police department, sorry, Braxton. My feeling is the most important department is the waste management department.
Right. So we did this last budget. We go to a minimum $20 an hour wage as a starting point for all city employees. That certainly helped us be competitive. And again, you know, we lose a lot of officers. I think one of our council members looked over the last 2 or 3 years. I need some help here. We've lost 16 officers, a lot of those to some of the surrounding cities in the past. So we're finally competitive with all these other cities, talking about trying to help out with housing where we can. A lot more to come on that. Not a city initiative. There's some folks in the community that are interested in potentially developing a program to help out. Police Foundation Fund helps out with that. So we're always looking for ways, again, to relieve that budget, relieve our taxpayers from that burden, get a little bit more from our visitors, or use different pots of money for funding those types of things.
Good morning, Clint. My name is Dan. My wife and I are general managers at Oakwood RV Resort just up the road.
Yes, sir.
And as we're talking about growth, obviously there's a lot of new RV parks coming in to Fredericksburg. And to remain competitive, we have to make our park the best it can be. One thing we're running into at Oakwood is there are businesses, particularly CrossFit, coming in, and their noise, they're not following noise ordinance. They're playing loud booming music starting at 5:30 in the morning. That's having a negative effect on our guests and our park. What can be done? I know that I've had conversations with Brian. We've had law enforcement over there probably at least half a dozen times to try to reduce that noise. It's bad enough at 5:30 in the morning, but then it happens all day long. And you have guests coming in that they're coming in to spend time in Fredericksburg, to enjoy their time here. You know, they spend money here, but then they're getting frustrated because they're woken up in the morning, they're trying to sit outside, enjoy their day, and all they hear is boom, 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 boom. And something needs to be done about that. Is there something that can be changed in the laws or regulations to prevent that from happening all hours of the day? Because right now, that's something that's not definitively answered in what we currently have. Like if you're 50 feet away from a car and an officer can hear that, that's a ticket. But if you're in a building, there's different decibel meters and all that kind of stuff, and the decibel meters don't pick up that booming sound that carries so far. So what can be done to reduce that or make a change to help businesses not have to deal with that, or residents, obviously?
Sure. Well, first of all, if you're dealing with that, I'm sorry you're dealing with that issue. I know that sort of thing can be a disruption. I am familiar with the issue, or Chief Borauer has briefed me on this. I have had access to some reports that have recently been completed. If I could talk to you offline, I can talk about some of that specifically, but we do have a sound ordinance that we have amended a number of different times. Sound is difficult. You can't just, like you said, measure it with a decibel meter. It depends on the frequency. There are a lot of things. I will say this, that a lot of these things, we would hope that neighbors could work with neighbors, businesses could work with businesses, work that out. A lot of it's a courtesy thing. There's not always a lot the city can do if the noise that's being generated is within limits. But I'd like to talk to you offline after the meeting if possible, and I'm available to you anytime you'd like to visit. You bet. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just, in light of talking about expenses and incomes and things like that, I was very glad to hear that the city is moving forward with its negotiations with the Hill Country University Center about that property. And I would like to remind everyone of the incredible benefit it will be to many of your grandchildren, your children, the children of the future, because that money is going to be used to expand and enhance scholarships that will be available to folks at this area. And given the high cost of education these days, I think that's truly going to be a benefit. So I hope this moves forward, and I think this community will benefit from that action for years to come.
You bet. Thank you for that. And I'll just add to that. We did a space study years ago that identified the city needed about 26,000 square feet for the next 10 years of growth. We're at 13,000 at City Hall. We have a lot of satellite offices outside of City Hall, a lot of communication breakdown. We're paying rent in other places. We have filled up every broom closet. Literally, if you'd like a tour, we have an office desk and chair in our last storage closet at City Hall. The University Center is 26,000 square feet. When you look at new construction, the purchase price is about a third to half of new construction, what new construction would be. Move in within a year versus 5 years for all the planning and things that go into a new facility. We also have the need to move fire EMS administration into the same area, so they will occupy offices at the existing City Hall, along with moving our police substation into the existing City Hall, so we'll have that greater police presence right there on Main Street, in the middle of Main Street. And that's one of the things that we've heard a lot in the 25 town hall meetings that we had when we got around town last year. A lot of people want to see the bicycle, police walking, and more police presence on Main Street right there. So we'll have that. We'll accomplish that. Just, a few other advantages of the move there. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to go around the room again give everybody the opportunity. I'm interested to know who you are, if you live in the city or the county. And again, feel free to ask any questions. We can't answer your question here today. We'll certainly get back to you. I'll start right here with our friend from Heritage Hill Country.
Well, thank you, Clinton. This will be my last meeting here, coffee with the city manager, and I regret that. My wife and I are moving to Air Force Village near San Antonio. They have a marvelous memory care and Alzheimer's center that is in my wife's future in the not too distant future. But I just wanted to say that I've lived in suburban, semi-rural communities, not too different in size from Fredericksburg, but in those communities in Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa. And I have never run across a city administration or a city organization that is so forward-thinking and proactive. They all have been reactive. Here in Fredericksburg, it's an unusual situation in that the administration is proactive, and it certainly shows throughout the community. We've been so pleased to be here for the past 12 years, and just felt very, very fortunate that we got to know people from Fredericksburg who in turn drew us into Fredericksburg. And it's been probably the finest period in our lives. So thank you to the city administration, certainly, but all the citizens of Fredericksburg.
Well, thank you for those words, and you will certainly be missed.
I'm Zach Poozer, owner of Chassis by Zach, and I have no additional questions.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate the informative meetings and meeting you. Thank you for being here. We look forward to your work and help in our community. I'm Karen. I'm Zach's wife.
Yeah, Tom Light. I'm in the city here. So.
I'm Justin Causey, I'm in the city.
Don Wagner of the city. The only thing I really want to bring up is those who do not attend city council meetings. I think the next city council meeting is very, very important. And why? Because, folks, we are in the land of Oz. Those of you that have not been out to the Fredericksburg Theater and missed the opening night of that, first of all, it was amazing. My wife made me go, and I said it was unbelievable. But our mayor is truly, they need to have a joke with him and somehow put a curtain up at the city hall and everything else. However, it wasn't about that. It was about what our mayor brought up about the children first time using on stage at the Fredericksburg Theater. And they brought in quite a crew. And the development and things for our kids to do, or your kids to do and grandkids to do, that theater is amazing, and I really thank him for doing that. Truly, go see the Oz. It's pretty good.
All right, thank you. All right. How about right here in the middle?
All right, real quick, I'm going to give an update on the TxDOT Mill and Overlay project, as Clinton mentioned earlier. So you've seen the traffic control signs that the subcontractors put up along Main Street, the side streets, and so forth. The rough schedule that we have right now, and this is subject to change, we're still working with TxDOT to get the exact schedule, but essentially they are planning to do the pavement markings removal the week after July 4th. So that's when the pavement markings would be removed, new pavement markings would be put in place for about a month, and then they'll start the base repairs towards the end of July, beginning of August. So the base repairs include those areas like in front of Whataburger, in front of Ace Hardware, where the pavement is truly failing, including the base underneath the pavement. Then the full-blown mill and overlay project will start about that same time towards the beginning of August. I would like to note that this is all night work, so it's not going to be done during the day. It'll be similar if you've driven on I-10 or any of the interstates at night, or late evening, I should say. It'll start probably, I would suspect, around 8, 9 o'clock and wrap up, by 6 a.m. So all night work. Again, we'll get the exact schedule. We'll get that to Sean and do more of a press release, both city website, newspaper, and so forth, when we have that from the area office out of Burnett. The limits of construction include from Crystal Drive, which is there by the UPS store, or where their turn lane begins. That's where the construction will start, and it'll go all the way out to the Y, the 87 North 290 West intersection. It also includes a short piece of Wrenchwood 1631, which is the landfill road, or there by It's Electric, Olive Street, and goes out to Eberly Lane. So that's included in that mill and overlay project. Any questions about what you see or anything you've heard on the street regarding the mill and overlay? Yes, sir.
Will the markings be the same diagonal parking?
The parking will be similar to the way it is right now on Main Street. Some of the pavement some of the pavement marking removing that'll take place is that center median yellow marked area that gives you a little bit of buffer. Basically, I think, in my personal opinion, all it does is invite pedestrians to stand out there mid-block. That will be removed. In addition to that, we are looking at some signal modifications, some left turn lanes, and stuff like that.
So removing that median in the middle will allow for the widening of the outside lane, so you'll have more room in that outside lane to get around long vehicles parked diagonally on Main Street. So mill and overlay, what that means is TxDOT is milling off a couple of inches and replacing that asphalt, and then it's driving on top of that. Thank you, Chris. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Lauren Itz, and I'm with the CVB.
Thank you for being here.
I'm Whitney Kuh. I'm with Mustard Architects. I'm actually grateful to come this morning and hear about what the city's plans are. I'm pretty aware of all the development happening in the area, but I do see from our point of view, from kind of the provider's standpoint to the influx of people coming in, that the city really does try to balance all the growth that we have, because as much as people may not enjoy it, we're growing, and we're growing very, very rapidly. So I think they're doing their best to try to manage that, direct that into areas that are really needed within our community. And even in the county, there's a lot of growth, but I know the county officials are also working to put regulations in place to try to help manage that growth as well. So we're grateful to be a part of it, help direct it, but I do see from the city and county standpoints, they're really doing a remarkable job at helping to continue to grow our communities in positive ways.
Thank you for that. You've already had your chance.
Just thank you.
Tom Musselman, Friendship Speedway. If you haven't seen it, yesterday in the San Antonio Express News, there was an article on patterns of growth in Texas that was very, very informative as to where people are coming from Texas. And the outlook of that article is that they're not coming from California. So read it. It's interesting. I think you can get in without a paywall. And it's talking about all the growth in all the Hill Country counties, and it does mention Gillespie.
Hi, I'm Kate Walker. I live in town. My husband and I moved here a few years ago from Indiana. I was back visiting in Indiana, West Lafayette, where Purdue University is, and I met a new faculty member and was chatting with her, and I said, well, where are you from? And she said, Austin. And I said, well, I live in Fredericksburg. And she said, oh, I've always wanted to live in Fredericksburg. And I said, everybody does. Anyway, my question really is about our movie theater. Is there any movement on getting a movie theater restored and revitalized here in town? Although I also love live theater.
I cannot answer that question, can I?
The movie theater is not in the city limits. So, it's sold, and we had a conversation with a possible buyer, but they were looking to really annex so they could get water and sewer, because they can't do really anything else because they're kind of maxed out. That's not moved forward. They never actually issued or requested formal annexation, but I don't know who's going to buy it and do anything with it, because I think they're maxed out on water and sewer. Yeah. So I think whoever, it's a big lift to get it back.
Hi, my name is Rita Batiste. I've lived here about a year, and I'm loving it. I moved from Rockport, but originally from Honolulu, Hawaii. I went to the University of North Texas and got a film degree, and I'm working on the Fredericksburg Film Festival right now, which I'm starting. I also started a cruiser ride. That's why I asked the question about the pathways where we can ride our bikes. We start at the Marks Plots every Thursday. We support the local farmers by eating dinner there at 6, and then the ride starts at 7. But I encourage anybody with a bicycle, it doesn't have to be a cruiser bike, come join us, and just show your community support. I also started the ukulele, teaching it at Archway every Wednesday from 4 to 5. Bring your ukuleles, dust them off, and I teach you how to play it. It's a lot of fun and give you music to take home. So thank you. And I had one last thing to say. I live more on the way out of 290, and people fly in doing 80 miles an hour. I can barely turn in to get home. Sometimes I have to wait, seriously, 5 or 6 minutes. Is there any way the city can work with the police and put up more signs that encourage people, like, this is a community, to slow down? I mean, they literally are doing 80 and 90, flying in. They almost cross over the line to where I'm in the middle lane, and it just would be more friendly, if we had that.
Are you inside or outside the city?
Well, I'm over by the Archway side in the RV park. So they're just coming around from that Exxon and flying in that road right there.
So that portion of the roadway is in the county, that portion of the roadway is in the county, but I can definitely talk to the sheriff and the patrol lieutenant of the sheriff's department and see if they can get some more enforcement out there.
That would be great. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm JP with Create Healthy, and thank you very much, and no questions.
Mickey Cunningham, I'm in the city, and one question is, what's that ugly looking glass trailer over by Cozy on East Main? That thing is like way out of anything that we have here.
Braxton? Anna? Braxton?
Maybe both of us.
It's unapproved. It was just dropped in like an alien spaceship. Yeah, it showed up unapproved. They've been notified that it's not approved, so at this point, we're working with code enforcement to have it removed.
And code's working on it as we speak. So we've been working on it. There's a notification process that goes through there, and they have X amount of days to comply. So we're already into that process and working on it.
I didn't know we had a comedian on staff. It's been pretty funny lately. Yes, sir.
John McManus, City, no questions.
Brenda Cole, City. Speaking of that alien thing that just dropped in, how does that fit into our dark sky ordinance? I mean, it just seems like completely the opposite of what we're trying to do, to have dark skies.
Right, again, it's not approved. So if you want to add anything more to dark skies, all new developments have to comply with our dark sky initiative. And we will continue to retrofit. The city's done a retrofit of all of our street lights, full cutoff, by 2029 in order to be a dark sky city or maintain that designation. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So any new construction, so if that were approved, it would have to meet dark sky compliance.
Yep.
So full cutoff, so it wouldn't get, yeah. Yes. But fixtures.
It seems to me that possibly people who issue the permit for occupancy, that they would note that it should be a requirement.
It is a requirement. They do not get their certificate of occupancy if they do not meet it. Now, I can tell you we have issued a CO and looked in the garage and seen a non-compliant that's in the box. And that the owners, once they get their CO and the contractor's out, because we sign off for the contractor did his work, sign the CO, and then the next day the owner says, cool, I'm going to put up what I want.
Well,
and so then it's a code enforcement issue. So we would then, of course, have to be notified of that. If a neighbor sees it, call it in. And then it's a code enforcement issue.
Yeah.
If you know, if you could let us know.
908 Travis, West Travis.
You could let us know after the meeting, that would be great. Gotcha.
Yeah. So all of their outdoor lighting is non-compliant. And it's a new construction. It's probably built in 21.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Cheryl Rowan, live in the city. No question or comment.
Thanks for being here.
Dana Rowan, live in the city. Just a PSA, there's a lot of fawns out there right now. And when you're going around water like Town Creek or Barons Creek or whatever, be cognizant of the fact you don't have to go the speed limit in those areas because the fawns don't know where they're going and they just run across the road without any experience. So please take care.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name's Chris Weidenfeller, longtime resident of Gillespie County and member of Pedernales River Alliance. And I'm kind of concerned where we're going to get all the water for this development and how we're going to deal with the wastewater.
Okay, which development?
Well, actually, like the rural developments like Archray and Village at Grape Creek.
Well, regarding the water, again, they're outside the city limits, so they'd be working with the Country Underground Water Conservation District and the county on those development standards on the wastewater side. I know that they have been working with the TCEQ to try to get a discharge permit for a packaged wastewater treatment plant for their facilities out there. I know that there have been some questions about that. I will say that I have had discussions with the owners about the potential for them to request annexation into the city limits so that that discharge can be handled by the city's wastewater treatment plant. I don't have any more detail than that. We have just had a conversation at this point. I don't know that they will be moving forward with that, but that is certainly an option. But I will say that if it's a permitted facility, that discharge into the river has to meet very stringent standards. They have to have someone that is certified to operate that plant. So essentially that discharge wouldn't be any different in terms of the quality of the water than the city's discharge into the river. So the TCEQ, again, regulates those types of things. And Chris, you might speak a little bit more to this if you know a little bit more about it, but that is the truth.
So I am aware that TCEQ does regulate that, but they leave the self-reporting and all that up to the development. They do self-testing and self-reporting. And we talked to TCEQ and they said they probably wouldn't send somebody out for the first 5 years, like their permit renews at 5 years, and you might be dumping waste in there for 5 years before anybody even catches it.
Well, we certainly don't want that. I'm completely with y'all on that. Certainly, we would expect any development that has a permit like that to ensure that they're not damaging the only water resource that we have. So, Chris, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, as Clinton mentioned, the plant has to be operated by a trained, educated operator. There's different classes of those operations license. I'm not sure what class would be needed for that particular plant. Our plant requires a Class B operator, so it's a pretty high experienced operator, I would say. Class A is the highest. Ours requires a Class B because of the size. It's based on the flow or the volume in the plant, and also the complexity of the plant. Some plants require much more higher advances of technology and so forth, just depending on what those limits they're trying to meet. With that being said, I can tell you that about every 2 to 3 years, we have a site investigation. But in addition to that, we're constantly taking our sampling, sending those to labs. All that's reported, like you said, self-reported to TCQ, but all of that has to be submitted, and it's reviewed both electronically and on paper. I'm not sure how often, but San Antonio, Region 13 is our district that we fall within. And they could come up for any reason. They could just show up at the doorstep, and they do that on occasion. Typically it's hey, we're gonna be there next Thursday with a courtesy phone call, but they could certainly come at any time. And we welcome that. We have no problem at the city when TCQ comes in. We welcome the investigators that come in. And quite honestly, you know, if you see what's coming to the plant versus what's being discharged, it's a remarkable process that takes place. It's obviously not a glamorous job, but the guys, as Tom mentioned, it's a very crucial piece to our community. Probably more crucial than some of the other services that are offered because it's got to go somewhere. So I can't speak to the details of Archray or the villages of Grape Creek and what they're looking to do. But at the city, we take a lot of pride, and we handle those situations on a daily basis because obviously things do change, not weekly, but I would say over time. They have certainly changed.
So yeah, I am aware of some of those standards that they have as far as the water being discharged, but they're not essentially testing for everything that I actually thought was pretty important, and I found this out. So like they're not testing for pharmaceutical discharge and drug discharge and things of that nature.
And not many plants are, I'll be honest with you. It's not a regulated amount on, I think if you look at permits across the state, it's not something that's being tested, but it's not a permit limit. In other words, to be able to take that material out, you're talking about a very, very high class treatment. I mean, like RO and wastewater. It would increase our operations cost tremendously. I mean, we are talking tens of millions of dollars, not thousands of dollars, but tens of millions.
So there's two things in particular that are very difficult to remove from the wastewater stream. And one is pharmaceuticals, the other is hormones. And again, when you look at statewide, I don't know that there's anyone that is actively doing that. It's not part of a discharge permit, you know. And again, I agree, you know, when cities are doing things like tertiary treatment, where they run that wastewater right into their water treatment plant to treat it, they're still not able to get a lot of that material out.
Right. So then we have to deal with the wastewater that is actually being put into the creeks and the rivers. And one of the major problems is not that it is clean, but not quite clean enough. Because what happens is when they clean out all the things that they're supposed to clean out, they still leave enough in that water that it's nutrient rich.
Right.
And when it hits the river, which is, it's very intolerant of things like phosphorus because of the way our geology is. When it hits that river, it will eventually turn into an algae bloom, and some of those can be very toxic to cattle, to people who are swimming in the river, wading in the river, et cetera, fishing, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't want any discharges into the river simply because of that. There are alternative means for discharging wastewater, and that's what we seek. Now, with regard to the village at Grape Creek, we fought that one hard, and we got to say thank you to everybody who showed up at that meeting on June the 13th. because you really showed us that you love the river. You love it. It's part of your lives, and we want to keep it that way. So that means we don't want wastewater in the river, period. And with regard to Village at Grape Creek, we also discovered through the Hill Country Underground Water District that that area where Beckman Branch flows and where they want to put this development, and it goes up to the river, all of that is a recharge zone for the Hinsel Aquifer, and you know what lies under the Hinsel.
Right.
It's the Ellenberger.
Right.
So we have concerns about all of those, and we will continue to work those issues. But again, thank you for everybody who supported us on June the 13th. It was a marvelous experience to be able to hear everyone express just how much they cared about the river.
Well, thank you for that. And again, we are continuing to work with that developer, so there is the potential for them not to have that discharge at that point. So again, we're at a starting point right now, a lot more to come on that. And it's not anything the city is pursuing, but if someone's interested in coming into the city limits, then they would have to follow the process to do that. And that conversation's already started. I'll keep you posted. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Ted Botter. It's my wife, Christina. We retired here about 2 years ago, live in Vineyard Ridge. Just want to say thank you to all those that service this city. We really consider it a home and are very blessed to be here, especially police. Thank you.
Do we go to Wendy?
It's late. To the gentleman up front who asked about county regulation on water, could I get your attention real quick? Please join the Pedernales group that you just heard from, and also the Hill Country Alliance, who's looking out for regional planning in terms of water development, wastewater treatment, erosion, all of the things. And most of all, educate your neighbors. I've been on a campaign for years to try to get our neighbors, particularly the newcomers in the county, to realize that that aquifer does not stop at the city limits. Also, bittersweet news, sir. Wizard of Oz is sold out. We are taking backup reservations for tickets that may get returned, but you're right. This has been it's been community theater at its very best. It's touched a lot of lives. Almost half of the people on stage are first timers. And right after this, we have the Fredericksburg Theater Academy's production of Finding Nemo Jr. So if you know young people, kids, grandkids that would like to participate in that, please send them our way. Thank you.
And Rosemary, I did not intentionally
make you last.
Make you last. So.
Last but not least, I'm Rosemary Estenson. I've lived in this area for 35 years. I came here not knowing one person. I know more than one now. Okay. I love this place, and those of you that know me know I fight for this community, and someone comes in and tries to hurt us, I'm going to be there. Okay. All I'm going to say today is on September the 9th, my husband and I opened up the Fredericksburg Brewing Company. We will be 30 years old. We're having a party from 5 to 8. I'm trying to get my girls to agree with this. Mom, why would I said it's time to give back? We went back and researched. Our beers at that time were $3.25 a pint. Anybody want to know what pints go for today? Anywhere from $7 to $7.95 to $8, something or other, the Dodging Duck someplace. Anyway, for those 3 hours, I'm trying to get them to go back in time. We'll work on that. But please, if you're out, please come see us. We were also the first restaurant in town to require non-smoking. This is a German community. I can't tell you how many people laughed at us for that. But my mother died from emphysema, and I said, I'll be damned if you're going to smoke in my, sorry for that, smoke in my place. Okay? What? Okay. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just another quick PSA. On July 11th, I'll be giving a talk on Fredericksburg geology to the library. So it's a public library, it's a public forum, anybody can come. I think it's at 10 in the morning, but you check their website for the actual time. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Last thing, preview week 2024 for the new Food and Wine Fest that is being run by the Chamber of Commerce. This has been a city event for the last 34 years. The Chamber, the Council has voted and allowed the Chamber to take that over in a very exciting preview week with 6 different events between the 23rd of July and the 27th. So check this out. There are tickets available. And again, preview week for what's to come. If you haven't seen the interview with the news station out of Austin that the Chamber CEO Jim McCool and Haley Wakefield, their special event coordinator, did. A lot of really exciting stuff to come. And I will say this, that this is primarily for locals. So take advantage of this. You can visit wineries you have or haven't been to. A lot of different restaurants in town will be part of that. And again, preview week for a new Food and Wine Fest coming up in 2024, October. They'll continue to build that event year over year. Really excited about the potential for that. So thank you for being here this morning, and we will see you next month. Thank you.
Please join us in keeping Fredericksburg and Gillespie County special. Be Texas friendly. Share the road. Put litter in its place. Respect private property. And protect our dark skies. Thank you for caring about our community.
The community in Fredericksburg is growing, and we know that people choose to live here, and for very good reason. It's important that we have resources in place so that people can take care of themselves, so that our economy can keep moving, so that this community can continue to thrive. And this is our opportunity to help them stay well and stay part of the community as contributing members.